They called him Manos de Piedra, Hands of Stone, a fighter feared not only for his savage punches, but for the relentless way he broke opponents, mentally and physically. To the casual fan, Roberto Durán is often remembered for one haunting phrase, No Más. The night he inexplicably quit against Sugar Ray Leonard in 1980 became a shadow over his legend. But here's the truth, Durán was far more than a moment of surrender. He was one of the most complete, vicious, and enduring fighters the sport has ever seen. From the back alleys of Panama to the grandest arenas of Madison Square Garden, his story is not just about power. It's about survival, pride, and the will to fight until nothing is left. How does a poor kid, abandoned by his father, rise from street brawls to conquer 4 weight divisions across 5 decades? How does a man, written off countless times, return again and again to shock the boxing world? This is not just the tale of a champion, it's the deep dive into the soul of a warrior, forged in hardship, refined in the ring, and immortalized in history. Welcome to Boxing Chronicles. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories of legends who define the fight game. Roberto Durán was born on June 16, 1951, in the rough neighborhood of El Chorrillo, Panama City. His father, an American soldier of Mexican descent, left when Roberto was still a child, leaving his Panamanian mother to raise him and his siblings in poverty. The streets of El Chorrillo were unforgiving, a world of crime, hunger, and constant struggle. For many kids, survival meant hustling, stealing, or fighting. For Durán, fighting quickly became second nature. As a boy, he would spar barefoot in back alleys, throwing punches against older kids for pocket change or scraps of food. He was small, skinny, and poor, but there was fire in his eyes and defiance in his fists. Locals began to whisper that this wild child had something different, a natural rhythm, a raw fury that made him impossible to ignore. Durán's first exposure to organized boxing came when he snuck into a local gym. There, he impressed coaches with his ferocity and willingness to take hits without backing down. A trainer named Nestor Plomo Quiñones became one of the first to guide him, channeling the street brawler into a disciplined fighter. Yet, even in the gym, Durán never lost that edge. He trained with the desperation of someone who knew the ring was his only escape from poverty. The boy who had once fought barefoot in the streets was slowly transforming into something more. A fighter who would carry the raw energy of Panama with him every time he stepped into the ring. His childhood was not one of comfort or privilege, but of survival, and that survival instinct would become the foundation of his legendary career. By the time Roberto Durán turned 16, the ring had already become his second home. With only a handful of amateur fights under his belt, he decided to leap straight into the professional ranks, a bold move that mirrored his fearless nature. On February 23, 1968, in Panama City, a skinny teenager stepped into the ring for his professional debut. He won by unanimous decision, and just like that, a new journey had begun. Durán didn't have the polished resume of Olympic champions or Golden Gloves winners. What he had instead was hunger, pure, unrelenting hunger. In those early years, he fought anyone, anywhere, sometimes multiple times in a month. His style was raw and relentless, fueled by aggression and a desire to overwhelm opponents before they could settle into their rhythm. Many critics dismissed him as just another brawler from the streets, too wild to last, too undisciplined to reach the top. But fight after fight, win after win, Durán proved them wrong. By 1971, he had compiled an impressive record and was beginning to earn a reputation beyond Panama's borders. His power was undeniable, his stamina unmatched, and his ability to intimidate opponents inside the ring was becoming his greatest weapon. The Hands of Stone nickname started circulating even before he became a champion, whispered with respect and a touch of fear. Still, Durán's rise was not without obstacles. He often faced more experienced fighters, battled doubts about his conditioning, and carried the burden of representing a nation desperate for a hero. Yet, every time he stepped through the ropes, he brought the spirit of El Chorrillo with him, raw, unapologetic, and unbreakable. Those early years set the stage for what would come next, the transformation of a hungry street kid into a world champion who would shake the boxing world. To understand Roberto Durán's greatness, you have to understand how he trained. For him, boxing was never just a sport, it was survival, and he prepared for every fight as if his life depended on it. His training camps were grueling, filled with an intensity that mirrored his fighting style, relentless, punishing, and uncompromising. Durán was famous for his road work. Before dawn, he would lace up his shoes and run through the hills of Panama, building the kind of stamina that allowed him to pressure opponents round after round without fading. He didn't just jog, he sprinted, attacked the pavement the same way he attacked the ring. His coaches often said Durán's conditioning was his hidden weapon. He could outlast almost anyone, wearing them down until their will broke. In the gym, his routine was old school but merciless. Hours on the heavy bag, pounding it with combinations until sweat drenched the canvas beneath him. Endless rounds of sparring, sometimes with multiple partners, rotated in to test his endurance. Jump rope sessions that showcased his rhythm, quick feet, and agility, developed not from fancy footwork lessons but from years of dancing around danger in the streets of El Chorrillo. Calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups were staples, done in brutal repetition until his body felt carved from stone. What set Durán apart was not only what he did, but how he did it. He approached every exercise with ferocity, as though every punch thrown in training carried the same weight as a championship fight. He was not a scientist of boxing like Mayweather, nor a stylist like Leonard. He was a craftsman of brutality, training his body to impose his will on others. His sparring partners often recalled the same thing. Once Durán turned it on, you felt like you were in a real fight, not a practice session. His diet was simple, reflecting the scarcity of his youth. Lean meats, rice, beans, fruits, and water. There was no luxury, no elaborate sports science, only discipline. He believed toughness came not from fancy routines, but from repetition, pain, and sacrifice. Durán's preparation was also mental. Before big fights, he would visualize his opponents breaking under pressure, imagine himself walking through their best punches, and coming out unscathed. His mind was trained to see himself as the predator and his opponents as prey. He carried that intensity into the ring, making opponents feel his presence before the first bell even rang. This philosophy created the foundation for the fighter fans came to know as Hands of Stone. He didn't just punch hard, he fought with the conviction of a man who had endured poverty, hardship, and doubt, and turned all of it into fuel. His training camps were not about perfecting form, they were about forging willpower. And in boxing, willpower often outweighs everything else. Durán's preparation was the embodiment of his fighting soul, relentless, unforgiving, and brutally effective. It was the reason he could step into the ring against champions and legends, not only survive, but dominate. If Durán's training built his body, his mindset forged his legend. Inside the ring, he was not simply a boxer. He was a warrior who carried the weight of his past with every punch. Fear was something he learned to master at an early age. Growing up in El Chorrillo meant that hesitation could get you hurt, or worse. By the time he became a professional, he treated fear not as an obstacle, but as fuel. Durán's psychology was rooted in intimidation. Before the first bell, he stared at opponents with a glare that cut straight through them. He wanted them to feel beaten before a single punch was thrown. His belief was simple. Boxing was war, and war was about breaking a man's spirit before breaking his body. When you step into the ring, Durán once said, you must be ready to kill or die. That's the only way to fight. Unlike fighters who leaned on flash or showmanship, Durán's discipline came from an almost primal code. He avoided distractions, living like a soldier in training camps, focused only on the battle ahead. Visualization played a major role in his preparation. He would imagine himself walking through fire, eating punches, and still pressing forward until his opponent had nothing left. What separated Durán from others was his refusal to acknowledge limits. He believed no man could truly defeat him if he imposed his will completely. That mentality made him dangerous at any stage of his career, even when younger, faster opponents stood across from him. His mind was as much a weapon as his fists. This psychology, fueled by discipline, intimidation, and an unshakable will, was the invisible force that turned a fighter into a legend. For Durán, boxing was never a game. It was a matter of pride, survival, and dominance. Roberto Durán's career is defined not by one moment, but by decades of unforgettable nights inside the squared circle. His first great triumph came in June 1972, when he faced Scotland's Ken Buchanan at Madison Square Garden for the WBA lightweight title. Durán was only 21 years old, a ferocious challenger with something to prove. From the opening bell, he unleashed a relentless assault, overwhelming Buchanan with pressure and body shots. By the 13th round, Buchanan could no longer continue, and Durán was crowned world champion. It was the birth of a reign that would cement him as one of the greatest lightweights in history. For the next 7 years, Durán ruled the lightweight division with an iron fist, defending his title an astonishing 12 times. His style, relentless pressure, savage body punching, and an unbreakable will made him nearly unbeatable. Many boxing historians argue that no one before or since has ever dominated the lightweight ranks with the same ferocity. But Durán's true immortality came in June 1980, when he moved up to welterweight to face the undefeated Sugar Ray Leonard in Montreal. The fight was billed as the Brawl in Montreal, and it delivered. Leonard was the flashy American superstar, but Durán dragged him into a street fight. For 15 rounds, Durán cut off the ring, bullied Leonard, and forced him into exchanges he couldn't win. When the final bell rang, Durán was the victor by unanimous decision, stunning the world and solidifying his place among the elite. Yet his career was far from over. In 1983, he fought the great Marvin Hagler for the middleweight crown, pushing the champion to the limit in a hard-fought battle that went the distance. Then, in 1989, at the age of 37, Durán shocked the world once again by defeating Iran Barkley for the WBC middleweight title. It was a stunning reminder of his durability and skill, earning him respect as a legend who could reinvent himself across decades. By the end of his career, Durán had fought in 5 different decades, won world titles in 4 weight classes, and compiled a record of 119 fights with 103 victories, including 70 knockouts. His resume reads like a history book of boxing. Ken Buchanan, Esteban de Jesus, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, Iran Barkley. These fights were not just victories. They were demonstrations of what happens when relentless training, an indomitable mindset, and natural talent collide. Each night in the ring, Durán proved why they called him Hands of Stone. For all his triumphs, Roberto Durán's career was also marked by crushing setbacks, none more infamous than November 25, 1980, the rematch with Sugar Ray Leonard in New Orleans. After 8 rounds of frustration, unable to catch the dancing Leonard, Durán suddenly turned away and told the referee, "No más, no more." The image of a feared warrior quitting in the middle of battle shocked the world. Overnight, the myth of invincibility was shattered, and his reputation took a devastating blow. Critics called him a quitter. Fans who once revered him now questioned his heart. For a fighter whose pride defined his identity, this was the lowest moment of his career. But if there is one truth about Durán, it is that he could never be kept down for long. In the years that followed, he endured punishing defeats, including a brutal knockout loss to Thomas Hearns in 1984. Many believed it was the end. Yet Durán refused to walk away. He reinvented himself, climbing weight classes, challenging bigger, younger men, and proving that his fighting spirit was unbreakable. The crowning redemption came in 1989, when at 37 years old, he faced Iran Barkley, a powerful middleweight champion nearly a decade his junior. In a war of wills, Durán outboxed and outlasted Barkley, winning by split decision to claim the WBC middleweight title. The victory silenced doubters and reminded the boxing world that greatness cannot be measured by a single night of defeat. Durán's career was a story of resilience. For every devastating loss, he came back stronger, a testament to his belief that true fighters are defined not by falling, but by rising again. Roberto Durán's legacy stretches far beyond the numbers, though the numbers themselves are staggering. 119 professional fights, 103 victories, 70 knockouts, and world titles in 4 different weight classes. Few fighters in history have displayed such versatility, longevity, and ferocity inside the ring. At lightweight, he is often considered the greatest of all time, a destroyer who combined relentless aggression with technical skill. At welterweight, middleweight, and beyond, he proved that heart and adaptability could carry him across divisions. But his impact was not only about belts and records. Durán became a symbol for Panama, a hero who carried the pride of a nation every time he stepped into the ring. For a country often overlooked on the world stage, Durán was living proof that greatness can emerge from the most difficult circumstances. He gave his people someone to believe in, a fighter who embodied their struggle, resilience, and spirit. His influence also shaped generations of boxers. Fighters who came after him studied his inside fighting, his ferocious body work, and his ability to pressure opponents without rest. Legends like Mike Tyson and Oscar de la Hoya have praised his tenacity and style, recognizing him as a master of controlled chaos. Perhaps the greatest lesson Durán leaves behind is the value of persistence. His career had moments of brilliance and moments of failure, but he always returned, undeterred. He showed that a champion is not defined by perfection, but by the ability to endure, to fight on when everything seems lost. Durán's story teaches us that greatness is not born in comfort. It is forged in struggle, sacrifice, and an unyielding will. That is why, decades after his last fight, Roberto "Hands of Stone" Durán remains one of the immortals of boxing. Roberto Durán was not just a fighter with heavy hands. He was the embodiment of Panama's fighting soul. From the dirt streets of El Chorrillo to the grandest arenas in the world, he carried with him a ferocity and spirit that few could ever match. He was feared for his power, admired for his endurance, and remembered for his resilience. His career spanned 5 decades, but his influence is timeless. Yes, people still talk about No Más, but when history is written, that single night fades against the vast canvas of his accomplishments. Durán fought legends across 4 weight divisions, defied age and doubt, and stood tall among the greatest names of all time. He wasn't just hands of stone, he was proof that greatness is built through hardship, sacrifice, and the refusal to quit when the world turns its back on you. And now, his story is yours to reflect on. Which fight do you believe best defines Roberto Durán's greatness? Was it the savage domination of Ken Buchanan, the gritty triumph over Sugar Ray Leonard in Montreal, or the astonishing comeback against Iran Barkley? Share your thoughts below, because Boxing Chronicles is about celebrating the voices of fight fans like you. If you enjoyed this journey through the life of one of boxing's immortals, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. More legends, more stories, and more lessons from the fight game are still to come. This was the story of Roberto Durán, the Hands of Stone.